A very good morning to all. In today's session, we are all going to learn about the ethics in research and substance of report. So let's begin with the research ethics. So what is exactly the research ethics is? It refers as a commitment that how a particular researcher or an individual or a group of person would ensure that whatever the knowledge they have shared, it should be a trustworthy and the beneficial for for the readers, participants, and the society. That is exactly called the research ethics. So, in other words, the research ethics is a set of guidelines that supports the researchers to do their research very carefully. It also defines the code of norms. Or you can say, defines that how to conduct the norms, which always make a difference between what is right and wrong. So, research ethics are also called a moral principles that a researcher follows in researching to fulfill a scientific competencies and deliver the best outcome or the results in their researches. So, in research issues is always occurred in researches which are very important to understand well. The principles where on which the ethics are actually based and related to the research process, data collection, data interpretation. In every section of the research report or the research proposal or the research synopsis, ethics plays a very significant role in all of them. So ethics is always based related to the research process, data collection, data interpretation, report publication, thesis, confidentiality, pluralism, obfuscation. Research ethics is also needed in the research meetings as well, that anything could not be copied from the other sources as well. And that is exactly called the research ethic, which is a sharing of knowledge which it remains trustworthy. It is a set of guidelines as well. It also reveals a few moral principles which deals with the scientific competence and deliver the best outcomes. And as ethics is everywhere to be followed in every section of the research proposal or report. And of course, at last, it also needed in research meetings. Now we come up to the next section, that is objectives of research ethics. These are the three main objectives. The first and comprehensive objective is to protect and guard the human participant. That any human participant could not copy or paste from the other sources directly. So their dignity, their rights, their welfare, etc. The second objective of the research ethics to make sure that research is directed in such a manner that assists the welfare of the people, the persons, the groups, the individual, the civilization as a whole. The third main objective is to inspect a particular research events, the schemes for the ethical reliability, the considering the issues such as controlling the risk, protection of the privacy concern, the confidentiality matters, and how the progression is to be made to of a informed concern regarding collecting the data. These are the ethical principles of research. When we talk about the researchers, we talk about the integrity, the competence, the non-maleficence, beneficence, autonomy, honesty, responsibility. But when we talk about the participant, we always talk about the justice, dignity, confidentiality, privacy, autonomy, beneficence, and the non-maleficence. So in each, you can say, expect every principle of research is always being, you can say, considered while preparing any report, any synopsis, any proposal in their research areas. Now we can come up to the overall principles of research ethics. The first one is honesty. Honesty is always talk about the truthfulness. The participants should be honest about their study results, about their conduction of research, what would be the methods of research is to be used for their own study. So be truthful, whatever you have included in your research study, and of course, always be honest with your other stakeholders, whether directly or indirectly as well. The next one is integrity. It means assuring the sincerity, the truthfulness, and keeping up the promises in agreements, so that no broken promises or the raise unholistic hopes or expectation on the other hand. Next one is objectivity. It always attempt to avoid the errors and the biases in experimental design where the scientific investigation is to be done by the researcher, the data analysis, the interpretation of the data, how the researchers critically analyze the information or the data which is being used in its own in his or her own study, and the other data analysis aspects as well, where the tools of data collection, how it should be everywhere, the ethics, the principle, the objectivity, that everything needs should have an objective to use, and that's all the one of the main principle of the research ethics. Next one is informed consent. Informed consent, it is always required when any of the participant is actually participating in that study intentionally, voluntary, and sensibly. So informed consent is always linked to the individual personal independent right to participate in research. And it always try to inform the participant about the study objectives, their involvement, about the potential advantages, etc. Next is beneficence is always refers that how the respondent benefits could be maximized and whether it is a morally acceptable obligation to maximize potential benefits or not, or to minimize the possible hindrance or harms to participants. Next is protecting the subjects. It always minimizing the research risk or harm where the privacy and the autonomy need to be maintained. So these are the principle. This is a principle which always focus on maximize the respondents' benefits and always minimize the harm of the participants or the respondents. So this is also the one of the principle of the research ethics. Next one is responsible publication. The publication need to be responsible one where it always focus on the concern on the issues that already exist in the society, or it's related to any of the concern in the subject area, where there will be no duplications, no plagiarisms, where it should not be copied from any other source, it should be original. And that's why the publication needs to be a responsible one. The submitted research should not be presented and published earlier anywhere. So when it comes to the publication, the publishers will always ask anyone or anyone that whether this particular research has been published earlier anywhere or not. So that is also the ethics, a research ethics, one of the principle of research ethics, that is the responsible publication. Next one is confidentiality. Keeping confidential information, the personal records to be protected, and it contains the information like the research initiation and goals, the discussion goal, the research procedure, the research expected benefits and drawbacks, if any, utilization of studies, their functions, what would be the working process in investigation, the ability to refuse or withdraw, what would be the methods that would be used to protect the user anonymity and the privacy. The next principle is non-discrimination. Avoid discrimination based on age, caste, sex, religion, race, and ethnicity. And everyone should be treated as equal. Everyone have an equal right to participate in the research. And after all, they are a human and being as a researcher to equally participate and work on the various researches, and there should not be a human rights violations. Next one is openness. The particular researcher should be open in getting the feedback, comments, and suggestion, whether it's positive feedback or negative, so that they can improve more and more in the upcoming researches and the present researches as well. Next one is carefulness and the respect for intellectual property. So be cautious of the potential errors and the basis. There should be no measurement errors. There should be no sampling errors. So give credit to others' intellectual property if the other person or acknowledge the others who have done on your behalf. So when referring to someone else's article or writing, always paraphrase. So just paraphrase whatever the content that you are using and written by the different authors in their respective articles. So don't ever copy or paste or don't plagiarize. Next one is justice. This always refers to equality among all the respondents and the participant. In fact, no respondent should be given partiality for the providing the response, and everyone should be treated equally. In researches and the various resources, every participant should be treated equally when when they share any of the data or information to any of the researchers, and the researcher has a responsibility to do a full justice with all the respondents and the participant and be treated equally among all. So that is also the one of the principle of research ethics. Now we can come up to the next section, the advantages of the research ethics. The first one is research ethics is always portray or promotes the objectives of the research. So without the main objective, without the subsequent objective, the research cannot be fulfilled. So every research has an objective that on what basis the research has been conducted by the researcher. Next one is it increases the trust among the researcher and the respondent. So automatically when there is a truthful and an honest research or the original research has been conducted, so a trust will automatically build up among the researcher and the respondents or between the researcher and the respondent. It is very important to admire or to adopt the ethical principles so that to protect the dignity, rights, and the welfare of the research participants and of the respondents. Researchers should always be accountable, answerable for their actions. Ethics always promote the social and the moral values as well. It also promotes the ambitions of the research of the researcher, like understanding veracity and dogging of any errors or basis. Ethical standards upholds the values which are very vital to cooperative work like belief, answerability, mutual respect, and impartiality. So these are also the one of the principles of the research ethics where which always comes under the ethical standards which has to be followed in the preparing the researches in the respective areas. Next one is ethical norms in research, which always keep to construct a public upkeep for research. Always the research should be conducted, should be the responsible one where the concern for the public it shall always comes up front in their researches. The people are more likely to trust any research project if they can trust the worth and the reliability of the research. So if the research is reliable, the people are more connected to such researches, the such particular study area, and they can totally depend and trust on such research projects. So definitely the worth and the reliability of research can also be trustable. So that is the advantages of the research ethics. So automatically, if any of the researchers follow the principles, ethical principles of the research in their researches, so definitely it will get an advantage in the various you can say aspects. Next one is limitation of research ethics. The first one is possibility to physical integrity, where it always linked to the experimental drugs and dealings with other involvement that will be used in the study. This is also the one of the limitation where the physical integrity will always be involved in collecting the data from the respondents or the participants, and for example, the measures used to observe research participants like blood sample, X-ray, lumbar punctures. It always talk about the medical researches where the participant has to sit for a number of hours, and the particular you can say drugs or dealings in their researches in reality has to be done, is to be done. So this is something is one of the limitation of the research ethics, where the research ethics is not being followed and just doing in their own way about the collection of data from the research respondents. Next one is psychological risk. A cautionary may, of course, signify a risk if anything mentions which always portray any dramatic events or happening which always harm to the participant and respondent. So this is something a risk which is called psychological, where the such events which always keep kept in the respondent and participant minds, where the research could not be presented in an accurate manner. Next one is social, legal, and economic risk. For example, if the personal information has been collected during a study, is unintentionally released, then the participant might face a threat of judgment and stigmatization. Then automatically there is the secrecy or the confidentiality has not been there. So it is a time, it is also the one of the you can say limitation if such personal information is unintentionally released. Next one is certain tribal or the inhabitant groups may possibly suffer from discrimination and stigmatization. It always burdens because of the research. If it associates, if other groups are recognized, it is greater and the usual risk of deriving a specific disease. So if any of the diseases occurred and just research is to be done in a certain tribal groups or inhabited groups, then automatically it shows a discrimination. It is a violation of the human, you can say, relation or the human rights. And ultimately, it's such burden. It comes due to the researches when it comes to the a specific disease. So that is also the one of the limitation of the research ethics, where the research ethics couldn't be followed in such scenarios. The research may perhaps have an influence on the prevailing health system. Definitely, when it talk that this research had ethics, which also harm the prevailing health system, for example, human and financial capital, which is dedicated to research, may distract the attention from other demanding healthcare necessities in the community. So automatically, when there is a human and financial capitals is involved, which are totally dedicated to the researches, may always distract the attention for others necessary healthcare necessities in the community as well. And that is also the one of the limitation of the research ethics, where the one hand the these capitals which always beneficial to the researchers, but on the other hand they forget to focus on the demanding healthcare necessities as well. So this is something also one of the limitation of the research ethics. Now we can come up to the steps involved in ethics. So the first one is collect the facts and talk over the intellectual belongings openly. First, collect the facts and figures and then talk openly. Outline the ethical matters, just whether the ethical principles has been adopted or not in the following of researches. Next one is detect the affected parties like stakeholder, whether it affect to the retailers or wholesalers or any of the investors, etc. Ascertain the forfeits or anything that is actually not required, which is not essential, but still using up, just forfeit the areas. Recognize the respondents, that is, should be the principles, rights, and justice as well. Contemplate your personality and the truthfulness. Just focus on your personality. Be just being honest, whatever has been done in your researches, and should be original. Next one is deliberate innovatively about the possible action. Of course, if there is any issues and concern in the researches, a possible action should be ready in advance or should be prepared in advance. Respect privacy and confidentiality, resolve on an appropriate ethical action, and willing to deal with divergent point of view. It doesn't mean that researcher is always focused on one area. He or she should also focus on another areas so that they can have a divergent point of views whenever there is any issue in concern, and at a time to resolve with an appropriate ethical action and willing to deal with, they should have a diversified uh, or divergent point of view. Next one is ethical issues in researches. Informed consent. The one of the common ethical issue in research is informed consent. If the researchers which always ensure that participants are always aware about the purposes, methods, risks, and benefits of the study before agreeing to participate in the study. If the researchers fail to obtain a proper informed consent, and it could lead to participants being aware about the political risk or political consent into participating without their voluntary agreement. That is also the one of the ethical issues in research. So if it is important to make them aware about each risk, each potential risk, whether legal, whether political, whether economic. So there is a foundation, there is a binding or voluntary agreement between the researcher and the participants. And if it not happen, that's become the ethical issue in research. Next one is confidentiality and the privacy. So the another significant ethical issue is the confidentiality and privacy. Researcher must protect the personal information of the participant or the respondent and always ensure that any data collected is kept secure and anonymous whenever it's necessary. So breaching the confidentiality which always harm and damage the trust between the researcher and the community. Next one is pluralism. So, pluralism is also a major ethical concern in research. It always occurs when the researcher presents someone else's idea and data, or someone is just capture the same idea, data, and test as their own without proper attribution. So automatically, when any of the researcher has copied from the other sources without making it original, so definitely it comes under pluralism. So automatically, don't copy and paste, just be original. The pluralism always undermines the integrity of the research process, and of course, they violate the academic honesty, which is always leads to a loss of credibility for the researcher and their research work. Now, the next is what are the research misconducts? So, these are the research misconducts. The first one is fabrication. It always refers to create a fake data for getting the adequate results. So if any of the researcher creates a fake data or manipulate the original data, that's become fabrication. So the data collected should be from the genuine sources, and the respondent should have agreed to provide their responses. Next one is falsification. Falsification means the researcher should create their false research according to his or her wish. The researcher need to create an impact on the society. Sometimes the researchers don't have time, so they just prepare the false researches according to their wish and wants or needs, and as a result, it comes under the research misconduct. Next one is pluralism. If any of the researcher copying the pictures, test from the others articles, from the others publication, and of course they don't have a copyright, so definitely it comes under pluralism. So it should be avoided, as it also terms as a legal issues for the researcher, and the researcher may rephrase the test and give reference to the article. Next one is research misconduct does not include the honest error or the differences of opinion. So if you have any differences of opinions or it's different from the other articles, it doesn't mean it's misconduct. So research misconduct does not include any honest error or differences of opinion. So research misconduct always comes as in fabrication, falsification, and the pluralism. Now we can come up to the next important part. What is research proposal? Research proposal is a document which is a structured document, a formal document which always reveals what you have planned to research. That means what is your research topic, why there is a need to research on, that is your justification why it is a need of doing such research, and the last is how you will plan to investigate it, that is your methodology, and that's exactly called the research proposals. So when any of the researcher give the responses about the what, why, and how, and just make it compelled into a document, in a structured document, that's become research proposal. The purpose of the research proposal is to convince your research supervisor, a committee, or the university that your research is suitable. That means you have to defend that whatever you have chosen the topic, whatever you have justified why it is worth for, and how you will investigate it. That is means that you have to defend that your research is suitable and according to the requirements of of a degree program, and how you will manage your research. That means to give a time frame, and how and what time and how much the time is actually needed to complete your research. What would be the how much the time is required for the resources that you might need in investigate it. So the most important word here is a convince, because a raw research proposal need to sell your research idea. So if you don't convince us, then definitely there should be an instability that means you will need to revise and resubmit. And this will cost you more valuable time, or whether it would delay your research degree as well, which is of course a bad news as well if it delay your degree. All right. So next part is what goes into a research proposal. A good dissertation or a thesis proposal need to cover up what, why, and how of your proposed study, which are already explained in the definition of the research proposal. What means that your research proposal needs to be clarify your research topic, and the topic should be very specific. It should not be ambiguous. So your research topic, make it very clear what you exactly willing to show up and what you plan to research on in what context. So it is an example of a research topic, an investigation into the factors which impact female generation wide consumer likelihood to promote a specific makeup brand to their peers, a British contest. So automatically you can see this topic is extremely clear, where you have a three within the topic you have to mention the three main aims, or to cover up the three main aims of your study. What is being investigated, the factors is to be investigated on a specific makeup brand, who it involves, a female white consumers. Next is in what constant, the United Kingdom. So this is how the you can see the what aspect is to be covered in your proposed study. Next one is why. So when as we already talk about what. So next is you need to justify why your topic is original. Why, what make it unique? What was a gap exists in the current literature does it fill? So it is a refresh of your existing researches, and which is not going to get approval. And if it is similar to your existing researches, is not going to get approval, you need to be a fresh uh, topic. Originality alone is not enough. If you have picked any of the topic from a list of the research topics, then you have to justify why this topic is important, why it is important to study. In other words, what value will it add to the world if you achieve your research themes? So definitely it's something big original. When you have saw any of the, you can see existing topics, create a fresh topic in it, and accordingly and will add some value, so that it portray to the society when if you will achieve your research aims. When you are crafting your research proposal, remember it is not enough for the topic simply being unique. It is always be a useful of value creating. That means you need to convey your research, and that adds value in your proposal. How? It is all good and well to have a great topic which is original and valuable, but it is also equally important that how you will undertake or you will investigate your research. That means your methodology. Is your methodology appropriate given your research aims? So whatever your research object is, whether the methodology or whatever you plan to achieve your objectives, whether it's appropriate for it, it's your research, it's your approach, manageable given your constraint, that is time and money, your energy. So it is very important to understand these aspects. So it is generally not expected that you will have a fully fleshed out methodology at the proposal stage, and you will need to still work out about your research methodology, and which shows your high level overview in terms of your mindset. So it is very important to have a research portion that you may need to address in your research proposal. That will you take a quantitative and qualitative mixed method approach? What would be the sampling strategy will you adopt? How you will collect the data like interviews, surveys, etc. And when you will answer all these three questions, what, why, and how, that means it will add a value in your proposal. How will you analyze your data? It will be descriptive, invariant statistic, content analysis, discourse analysis. What would be the potential limitation will your methodology carry? So this is all about the how, that how you will plan to investigate. So these are the questions that you have to answer in your proposal, in your synopsis. Categories of report. There is information oriented report, decision oriented report, research oriented report. When we talk about information report, an information report present the factual data and findings on a specific topic. So if you have chosen any specific topic, and on based on the topic you have presented a factual data and findings, which always aims to inform the reader about a particular subject, and that's called the information reports. The purpose to provide a clear, concise, and objective information to the readers. Content, it focuses on facts, figures, and data. You can see in your research reports, the weekly reports, the annual reports, the sales reports of the organizations or the companies. That's become the information reports, where you will get a concise information about the particular section, like sales figures, about the financial figures, etc. Structure, it typically includes an introduction, body paragraphs with supporting evidence, conclusion, and summary. Audience, it can be used internally within the organization or shared with external stakeholders. Examples, as I already told, it could be the weekly reports, annual reports, sales reports, financial reports, etc. Next one is the oriented, decision oriented report. And automatically, when we talk about decision oriented report, we always talk about a specific topic. But before that, the plan ahead determine the purpose and audience of the report. The research gathered relevant and data and information. So it's all about the decision oriented report, that automatically you have to choose a specific topic, and accordingly you have to gather the relevant data and information. For example, you have to study the financial performances or the financial indicators of any of the company. So, like for example, financial indicators of the Tata Steel Limited. So definitely, you have to determine the purpose, the audience of the report, gather the relevant data and information, outline, just structure the report with introduction, body paragraphs, and a conclusion. Right, present the information clearly and concisely. You can use the graph charts, graphs, other visual to support your findings. You can also sources the information in the respective, you can say paras or the figures or the graphs, and ensure the accuracy and clarity. Because clarity and accuracy must should have into in your research. Next one is decision-oriented approach, which always focus on evaluating and improving processes. That means a very specific, you can say, a topic is to be used where a decisions is to be taken accurately, a strategies is to be make out, prepared directly, inform and enable effective decision. You can see if any of the issues or concern occurred into a company where the higher authority has to take a decision. So a decision oriented report is to be prepared, and whatever the issues and what was the conclusion and the findings is to be made, and accordingly the decisions to be taken. It should be focused on outcomes. As if any of the concerns, the solutions, the action is to be taken out regarding any goals. So the aim is to use that data to make the informed decisions to get the desired results. User centered, a decision oriented approach focus on the user's perspective and the decisions they make. It should ensure the system and process to support that needs. Process improvement by analyzing decision point and communication process. It should be there within the processes, and decision oriented would also identify the areas for the further improvement and optimize the workflow. Let's take an examples here. Decision-oriented evaluations. The evaluations are designed to inform decision making, whether simply proving the program effectiveness, any teaching program, any product program effectiveness. Decision-oriented project development. Projects are structured around achieving a specific goals and outcomes with decision, and a throughout process should be based on those goals. Decision-oriented dialogue. Artificial intelligence assistants are always designed to collaborate with humans to help out their queries, their on focus or discuss on the complex decisions to make out, focus on the eliminating or unnecessary information, just eliminate the unnecessary information and keep up the relevant information and make an informed proposals. Next one is decision-oriented learning. Machine learning models are always trained, which always helps to prepare the proposals and just look out the proper decision-making results rather than just minimizing the statistical errors. So these examples is always prepared to make you understand that how the decision-oriented reports is to be made out. It focus on evaluation, project development, dialogue, learning. So these are the areas where the decision has to be taken for their companies, for their employees, and accordingly, the decision-oriented reports is to be prepared. Next one is research oriented. Research oriented is almost showing up or revealing a systematic investigation, a study to discover and interpret a new knowledge, a development of a research skill and knowledge in a specific field. It focus on research only, so there are research oriented programs and individuals should focus on the research activities over other academic activities such as teaching and administrative work. Skills and knowledge is, of course, required in a specific academic field like finance, marketing, management, logistics, sales management, and the critical thinking process. Focus on the original ideas and become a scholar in writing. That is one of the part of the research oriented report. It should focus on research, so automatically the researcher must be expertise in their academic research area. Skills and knowledge is to be required to have an to focus on the original research, critical thinking, scholarly expertise in writing as well. Importance of research experience, of course, they have joined the various research workshops, conferences, which always adds value in the researcher's CV that they have done a course-based projects, paid and volunteer work, and the research internships as well, and should match with the supervisor. So it is in research-oriented programs. If I'm a finance field, the supervisor should be from finance only. So it should be a strong match between the student research interest and the research of the faculty members. It should be crucial. Research-oriented equity and diversity standards. Some institutions have developed the standard to ensure the equitable and the inclusive research practices as well. Of course, the research-oriented report have the following section. First one is the literature survey. Literature review is always being used to find the gaps in the knowledge of the existing studies with reference to your study. Nature and scope of the study, what hypothesis to be tested, what would be the significance and the utility of the study. Methodology is for collecting how the researcher will collect the data, how they will conduct the experiment and analyze the data. Next one is to describe to description to give a description and analysis of the experiment or data. Findings. So what would be the results of the overall from the particular data or information? And once the finding has been come out, the conclusion, how the researcher would conclude the whole research. Next one is recommendations. If any of the recommendation is required to give to the readers, to the educators, to the researchers, to the teachers, then definitely the recommendation is to be included. Suggestions for further research. If any of the researchers have any suggestions for the further researches, so definitely they could include into a research oriented report. Then accordingly you can make up the evidence and data. So whatever you have presented the data, now the responses in the form of the tabulation has to be attached because it is shows as an evidence that you have collected the data, and which is in the form of evidence you have attached into your research, which looks like a meaningful data. So that's the one of the section of the research oriented approach, and this is an exact format and what would be the aspects are to be included into the research oriented approach. Next one is reviewing the draft. So automatically there are few questions which always helps the researcher to review the draft. The first one is author purpose. What will be the purpose of the author? Why there is a need to conduct such research? Reader profile. So definitely the reader profiles are to be equivalent to review it. The content, whatever the content has been written, that to be reviewed. Language and tone, then length, then appearances. So let's overview of these all questions. Author purpose. The lack of clarity and the explainedness in the communication purpose leads to two major problems. The first one is confusion in determining the mix of content, language, and tone, length, and looks, and the misinterpretation of the message. So the author purpose is if there is a lack of clarity in the communication purpose, so definitely could create a confusion and misinterpretation of the message. Next one is reader profile. The readership may consist one or more person or one or more groups. If more than one person segment is involved, check whether all of them are same or not. If not, then segregate the common interest areas from the special interest ones and then decide what type and the part of the research could actually satisfy the readers' groups. Content. The content is a very crucial communication aspect between the author and the reader. And attention should always given to the content about the and its organization, but the accuracy of the facts, the logic of the arguments. So automatically the focus, organization, and accuracy of the facts is always a part of the content. It should always focus. Focus means always focus on the different elements about the language, about the visual representation, about the pages, about the styles of the content is always be focused areas. So failure to polish the content, it makes the report as diffused as the amateur photograph. So all the wisdom of the authors cannot be wrapped up in a few pages. So only the essential uh, you can see information is required for the purpose which need to be covered in the research study. So the appropriate style, tone of the language should be set up into motion right from the first sentence and keep it to the end. Organization. So the focus is a foundation for the rest of the content. If any of the material is added and deleted in the text, check the focus whether it should mislead the paragraphs or the foundation. If needed, change the focus and the text to get the consistency of the paragraphs. So different messages would confuse the communication. You can see to the readers, and of course should ensure the discussion should be organized step by steps into parts of paragraphs. The arguments of each section and the paragraph should flow smoothly into the next one, and too many ideas are not being wrapped into one section. If you have an idea, multiple ideas just turn into a different long paragraphs. This is what the focus on the organization stands for. Next one is language and tone. Since the purpose of communication is to make the reader understand the message, so use the vocabulary and the sentence structure in such a manner that the particular reader could understand the terminologies, the vocabularies, words, language structure of any of the subject. This should be used in your particular report. So if any of the subject specialists are not familiar with the language structure terminologies, then it become then he or she could become a non-specialist or called a non-specialist. So being as a specialist, it is very important to use to understand the differences of the uses of the terminologies and the language structure. So for the effective communication, it is very important to use in your report. Next one is length. How long should the report be? So it is a this is a matter to be judged by the author, keeping in mind the purpose, subject, and the reader interest, and what would be the length of the particular report could be. So the shorter the content, the more attractive is to the reader. The longer the content, then definitely it will lose the reader interest and patience, and accordingly they just forget about the reading. So the author, in such scenario, the author has to rework and scale down the purpose, the focus, and content since from the beginning. So this is how you can see the particular, you can see the aspects are to be used in preparing the reports, that what would be the language and tone is to be used, what would be the length, the length of the report is to be, what to be the focus, how, what organizations is to be used where the reader could take an interest on it, what could be the terminologies and the language is to be used, the vocabulary words, what type of content the particular researcher could use into their researches, and it should relate into a specific ideas which are relevant to your research topic. And in this way, a research report is to be created in terms of, in such a manner, so that it could create, it could appeal and be attractive, and the reader interest could be remain consistent with your researches. So it is always important to understand when there is a differences in the usage of the content, in the terminologies, in the language structure. The effective communication should be such, when a particular researcher should understand the terminologies and the language structures and the content about the lens. So it is very important for the researcher, for the writer, that all these expect it should be considered in a very effective manner, so that it could create, it could create a sense of appeal and attractiveness, and create an interest into the minds of the readers, so that it could build up a main focus on the particular issue or concern which is actually need to be aware and need to be keep up the knowledge of the, or among the readers. So this is how the research report is to be prepared, and what factors is to be required, which has been shown in this particular slides. It could be length, language and tone, content, and any of the factors related to the organized format which is need to be followed in preparing the report. That's it for today. Thank you so much for listening this lecture. I will come up to a more and more interesting and relevant topics in the upcoming sessions. Till time, thank you and namaste to all.